The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered for an emergency session. The war with the hegemony had been raging for 3 standard cycles, and despite superior numbers, the Allied forces were losing ground on every front. Ambassador Zextai of the Vorthon Empire stood at the central podium, his 4 arms gesturing frantically as he addressed the assembly. "We need specialists," he announced, his translator device converting his chittering language into standard galactic. "Our conventional forces are being systematically eliminated by hegemony precision units. They strike from impossible distances, eliminate key targets, and vanish before our forces can respond." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Everyone knew about the hegemony's feared long-range elimination squads. They had turned the tide of dozens of battles by removing commanding officers, communications specialists, and strategic targets with surgical precision. "What do you propose?" asked Commander Hylix from the Zentari Confederation, her crystalline form reflecting the chamber's blue lighting. "We have already deployed our best marksmen, the Catherian Sharp Eyes, the Norvac Precision Corps, the Talvari Hunters. None can match the hegemony's range or accuracy." Ambassador Zextai's mandibles clicked nervously. "There is one option we have not yet explored. A recently contacted species from a small world called Earth. They call themselves humans." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Most representatives had never heard of this species or their planet. Earth was located in a backwater spiral arm, far from the established trade routes and political centers of the galaxy. "Humans?" scoffed General Korath of the Borvian military caste, his massive frame towering over his console. "What could some primitive species from an unknown world possibly offer that our elite forces cannot provide?" Zextai activated a holographic display showing Earth's data profile. "According to our xenobiologists, humans evolved on what they classify as a Class 12 death world. Extreme gravitational forces, violent weather patterns, and an ecosystem where every organism is locked in constant predatory competition." "So they are survivors," acknowledged Korath grudgingly. "But survival instincts do not translate to military precision. My Borvian warriors are the strongest in the galaxy. Yet even we struggle against hegemony long-range tactics." "The human delegation has already been contacted," Zextai continued. "They have agreed to provide a demonstration unit. 50 specialists they call snipers. They claim their soldiers can engage targets at ranges our best equipment cannot even detect." Commander Hylix's form shimmered with skepticism. "Impossible. Our sensors indicate maximum effective engagement ranges for biological entities. No organic being can accurately target beyond 800 standard units. It is simply a limitation of biology." "That is exactly what I said," Zextai replied. "Yet the humans were quite insistent. They provided recordings of their training exercises. The targets were engaged at distances exceeding 3,000 standard units." The chamber fell silent. 3,000 units was beyond the range of most standard military vehicles. The idea that individual soldiers could engage targets at such distances seemed absurd. "Trickery," declared Korath. "Some form of technological enhancement or deception. No biological entity possesses such capabilities naturally." "We shall see," said Zextai. "The human unit arrives tomorrow. We will observe their capabilities firsthand before making any decisions about deployment." The next morning, at the Allied Forces staging area on Kepler Station, a modest transport vessel docked at Bay 17. The watching alien officers expected to see soldiers emerging in powered armor or carrying exotic weapons systems. Instead, 50 humans in simple green and brown uniforms walked down the ramp, carrying what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons. Major Elena Vasquez led the human contingent, her dark eyes scanning the assembled alien officers with professional interest. She had been briefed on the various species they would be working with, but seeing them in person was still striking. The massive Borvians, the crystalline Zentari, The multi-armed Vorthans and dozens of other species created a fascinating tapestry of galactic diversity. General Korath approached the human group, his heavy footsteps echoing in the docking bay. "You are the human specialists?" he rumbled, his voice skeptical. "You appear quite small." Major Vasquez looked up at the 3-meter-tall general without apparent concern. "Size isn't everything, General. We're here to demonstrate what human snipers can do." "These weapons," interjected Commander Hylix, her crystalline form shifting to examine the rifles the humans carried. "They appear to be chemical propulsion systems, very primitive technology." "Primitive but effective," replied Sergeant First Class Marcus Chen, one of the team's senior marksmen. "Sometimes the old ways work best." The aliens exchanged glances. The humans seemed almost casual about the situation, displaying none of the rigid formality or aggressive posturing common among galactic military units. "We have established a demonstration range," announced Zextai. "Targets at progressively increasing distances, standard procedure for evaluating marksman capabilities." The group moved to the station's testing facility, a large chamber that could be configured for various military assessments. Holographic targets appeared at ranges starting at 200 standard units and extending outward in increments. The first alien marksman was Catherian Sharp-Eye Veltar, whose species possessed some of the keenest natural vision in the galaxy. He engaged targets out to 600 units with impressive accuracy before reaching his maximum effective range. Next came Norvac precision specialist Drakmor, whose cybernetic enhancements allowed him to engage targets at 700 units before his accuracy degraded below acceptable standards. Several other alien marksmen demonstrated their skills, each reaching their species' typical maximum effective ranges. The best performance came from a Talvari hunter who managed consistent hits at 850 units. "Impressive," acknowledged Major Vasquez politely. "Now, if you would extend the range to 3,000 units?" General Korath snorted. "The targets are not even visible at that distance without enhancement optics." "That's fine," said Chen, settling into position with his rifle. "We brought our own optics." The human weapon was fitted with a telescopic sight that appeared almost crude compared to the sophisticated targeting systems used by the alien marksmen. Chen adjusted several dials on the scope, checked wind indicators, and made calculations in his head. The target at 3,000 units was barely a speck visible to most of the observing aliens, even with their enhanced vision and technological augmentations. Chen fired a single shot. The primitive weapon produced a sharp crack and a small puff of smoke. 3 seconds later, the distant target registered a direct hit. The observation chamber fell completely silent. "Fortunate shot," muttered Korath, though his voice lacked conviction. Chen fired 4 more shots in rapid succession. Each one struck the target with precision. "Your turn, Rodriguez," Chen said to another human sniper. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez took position and engaged a different target at the same range, her shots grouped tightly in the center of the target zone. One by one, 5 different human snipers demonstrated the same impossible accuracy. Targets at 3,000 units, 3,500 units, even 4,000 units were engaged with consistent success. Commander Hylix's form shimmered rapidly, indicating extreme agitation. "This is impossible. Our physics calculations indicate that atmospheric interference, gravitational deviation, and Coriolis effects should make such accuracy unattainable." "You're right about the physics," agreed Master Sergeant James Thompson, the unit's senior instructor. "Those factors do affect the shot. That's why we calculate for them." "Calculate?" asked Zextai. "Without computer assistance?" "Mental math," Thompson replied casually. "Wind speed, air density, temperature, humidity, target movement, gravitational drop, even the rotation of the station, we factor it all in." The aliens stared at him in disbelief. The calculations required for such long-range accuracy involved dozens of variables, each affecting the projectile's trajectory in complex ways. The idea that biological brains could perform such calculations in real time seemed absurd. "Perhaps," suggested Commander Hylix carefully, "you could demonstrate these calculations?" Thompson nodded and pointed to a target at 4,500 units. "Wind is 3 units per hour from the left. Station rotation creates a 2-unit drift factor. Temperature differential between here and the target zone adds 0.7 units of drop compensation. Humidity is affecting projectile weight by approximately 0.2 units. He continued rattling off calculations that made the alien observers' heads spin. Complex mathematical formulas were solved in seconds using only mental arithmetic. Total compensation: 12 units left, 8 units high. Hold for 0.3 seconds to account for target oscillation pattern, Thompson concluded. He fired once. The target registered a perfect center hit. The demonstration continued for 2 hours. Human snipers engaged targets at ranges that the aliens had believed impossible for biological entities. They compensated for conditions that required advanced computer systems to calculate. Most disturbing of all, they made it look effortless. As the demonstration concluded, the alien officers gathered in hushed conference. General Korath, who had been the most skeptical, found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about biological limitations. "How?" was all Commander Hylix could manage to ask. Major Vasquez smiled grimly. "Earth is not a kind planet. Everything there tries to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria. Humans who couldn't calculate complex trajectories while under pressure didn't survive long enough to reproduce. Your world created evolutionary pressure for mathematical ability?" asked Zextai, fascinated. "Among other things," Vasquez replied. "A human child learns to throw rocks at moving targets before they can walk properly. By adolescence, they're calculating complex intercept courses instinctively. It's not special training. It's basic survival skill." The implications were staggering. An entire species that had evolved under conditions that made advanced marksmanship a necessity for survival. Every human was potentially a precision marksman by galactic standards. "There is more," added Thompson. "What you've seen today, this is basic proficiency. Our specialists can do much better." General Korath felt a chill run through his massive frame. If this was basic human capability, what could their true experts accomplish? "We need to discuss deployment immediately," announced Zexatai. "The hegemony's long-range units have been our greatest tactical challenge. If human snipers can match or exceed their capabilities—" "We can," said Vasquez with quiet confidence. "But you should understand something first. We've studied your enemy's tactics. Their long-range units rely on superior technology and mathematical targeting systems. They're very good at what they do." "But," prompted Commander Hylix, "but they think like machines. Predictable, systematic, logical. Humans think like predators. We don't just engage targets, we hunt them." The word hunt sent an involuntary shudder through several of the alien observers. Most galactic species had evolved beyond predatory instincts millennia ago. The concept of intelligent beings who retained such primal drives was both fascinating and terrifying. "Show us," said General Korath simply. Over the following days, the human snipers were integrated into various tactical scenarios. They were paired with alien spotters, given standard galactic equipment to evaluate, and tested in simulated combat environments. The results consistently exceeded expectations. Human snipers not only matched the range and accuracy of the galaxy's best marksmen, but demonstrated tactical flexibility that amazed their alien colleagues. When presented with a scenario where targets were protected by energy shields, the humans immediately began discussing angles of attack that would bypass the protection. When faced with camouflaged enemies, they identified concealment flaws that advanced sensors had missed. "You see patterns," observed a Zentari analyst after watching humans identify hidden targets in a complex simulation. "Patterns that our logic systems classify as random noise." Pattern recognition is survival, explained Sergeant Chen. On Earth, the difference between a shadow that's harmless and a shadow that's a predator waiting to attack is often just a few pixels of variation. Humans who couldn't see those differences became prey. The human unit's reputation spread quickly through the Allied forces. Stories circulated about impossible shots, uncanny target detection, and tactical innovations that seemed to come from nowhere. More importantly, word was beginning to reach hegemony intelligence networks. Reports of new Allied specialists with unprecedented capabilities were causing concern in enemy planning sessions. The hegemony had built their tactical doctrine around the assumption that their long-range elimination units were unmatched in the galaxy. The possibility that another species might possess equal or superior capabilities was forcing them to reconsider their entire strategic approach. As the human sniper unit prepared for their first combat deployment, the galactic balance of power was already beginning to shift. The hegemony's greatest advantage was about to face its first real challenge. Major Vasquez stood in the briefing room, studying tactical displays showing hegemony positions across 3 contested systems. Her snipers were scattered throughout the chamber, cleaning weapons, checking equipment, and preparing for their first real engagement against the galaxy's most feared long-range specialists. "Tomorrow we find out if Earth's children can really hunt among the stars," she said quietly to Sergeant Thompson. "They're about to learn why apex predators don't have natural enemies," Thompson replied with a grin. The hunt was about to begin. The planet Xerion 7 had become a strategic nightmare for the Allied forces. 3 major supply routes converged at the industrial complexes scattered across its mountainous terrain, making it vital for maintaining offensive operations in the outer spiral. Unfortunately, hegemony long-range specialists had turned the planet into a killing field. Major Vasquez crouched behind a boulder formation, studying the valley below through her scope. Intel reports indicated at least 6 hegemony elimination teams positioned throughout the rocky outcroppings that dominated the landscape. For the past month, these teams had systematically eliminated every Allied officer, communications specialist, and vehicle operator who approached within 5 kilometers of the primary supply depot. "Contact left," whispered Staff Sergeant Rodriguez through the comm system. 1,100 meters, 3rd ridge line, hegemony spotter. Vasquez shifted her scope and immediately identified the target. The alien was well concealed, using sophisticated camouflage technology that rendered him nearly invisible to standard detection systems. Unfortunately for the hegemony, human eyes had evolved to spot the slightest movement or pattern deviation. "I see him," confirmed Sergeant Chen from his position 400 meters to the right. "Kithrak species, probably their primary observer. His shooter will be positioned within 300 meters of his location." "How can you be certain?" asked Lieutenant Zartel, the Vorthon forward observer assigned to the human team. His nervous mandible clicking indicated stress at being this close to confirmed enemy positions. "Kithraks have excellent vision, but poor fine motor control," explained Rodriguez quietly. "They make perfect spotters, but terrible marksmen. Standard hegemony doctrine pairs them with Norvac shooters who have steady hands but limited visual range." "Found the shooter," announced Master Sergeant Thompson from his concealed position in a dead tree. "Norvac, positioned in the rocks approximately 240 meters southwest of the spotter. He's got a clear field of fire covering the entire approach to the depot." Vasquez nodded, continuing her scan of the terrain. "Keep looking. Hegemony teams work in overlapping pairs. Where there's one team, there's always backup." The human snipers had spent 3 days infiltrating the Xerion 7 combat zone, moving through terrain that Allied forces had declared impassable. While their alien colleagues required extensive support equipment and clear movement corridors, the humans had simply walked through the mountains carrying everything they needed on their backs. "Movement, center ridge," reported Sergeant First Class Williams. "Second Kithrak spotter, approximately 1,500 meters out. Elevated position." Excellent overwatch of the valley. His shooter? Asked Vasquez. Still looking. Wait. Got him. Norvac marksman, concealed in what looks like a natural cave formation. Range to target 1,600 meters. He's covering the secondary approach route. Lieutenant Zartel's forearms trembled slightly as he processed the tactical situation. You have identified 4 enemy specialists at ranges exceeding our maximum engagement distance. Standard protocol requires calling for artillery support or aerial bombardment. Standard protocol gets people killed, replied Thompson calmly. Artillery would alert every hegemony unit in a 50-kilometer radius. Airstrikes can't penetrate their shield generators. This requires surgical precision. The human team had identified something that their alien commanders had missed. The hegemony elimination teams weren't just randomly positioned. They were protecting something specific. Hidden among the natural cave formations was a sophisticated sensor array that provided early warning for the entire defensive network. Priority target identified, announced Vasquez after studying the tactical layout. Sensor installation, grid reference 77 Alpha. Take out their eyes first, then we clean up the shooters. Range to primary sensor array? Asked Chen. 2,200 meters, Williams replied after checking his calculations. Wind favorable, minimal atmospheric disturbance, clean shot. Lieutenant Zartel stared at the humans in disbelief. They were discussing engaging targets at ranges that exceeded the capabilities of vehicle-mounted weapons systems. This is impossible. Even our best marksmen cannot— We're not your best marksmen, interrupted Rodriguez with a slight smile. We're humans. The engagement began with surgical precision. Thompson's shot eliminated the primary sensor array at 2,200 meters, the projectile striking a critical junction that disabled the entire network. 3 seconds later, the hegemony teams found themselves operating blind for the first time in months. Confusion immediately spread through the enemy positions. The sensor system's destruction should have required heavy weapons or explosives, but there had been no artillery barrage, no aircraft, no energy signatures. Something had reached out across an impossible distance and precisely destroyed their most protected asset. First team, ordered Vasquez quietly. Chen and Rodriguez engaged simultaneously. The Kithrak spotter at 2,100 meters dropped without ever realizing he was under observation. His Norvac partner, hidden in the rocks 240 meters away, was eliminated by Rodriguez before he could react to his spotter's death. Second team, Vasquez continued. Williams engaged the elevated Kithrak at 1,500 meters, while Thompson eliminated the cave-concealed Norvac at 1,600 meters. Both shots fired within milliseconds of each other, synchronized timing that spoke to thousands of hours of coordinated training. The remaining hegemony teams were now completely isolated, their communication network disrupted, and their overwatch eliminated. They had no idea where the attacks were coming from or how many enemies they faced. Unknown contacts in Sector 7, transmitted a panicked hegemony communication that was intercepted by Allied intelligence. Request immediate reinforcement. We are under attack by impossible range weapons. Nature of attack? Came the response from Hegemony Command. Unknown. No energy signatures. No projectile traces, no vehicle movement detected. Our teams are being eliminated by invisible opponents. The human snipers continued their systematic elimination of enemy positions. Each shot was calculated with mathematical precision, accounting for atmospheric conditions, gravitational effects, and target movement patterns. What seemed like impossible accuracy to galactic observers was simply the result of millions of years of evolutionary pressure combined with intensive training. Third team. Bearing 270, reported Chen. Kithrak spotter in the collapsed structure, Norvac shooter approximately 300 meters north. I have visual on a fourth team, added Williams. They're trying to relocate to new positions. Range to spotter, 1,900 meters. Take them, ordered Vasquez. The systematic destruction of hegemony positions continued for another hour. Enemy teams that had held their positions for months were eliminated one by one, often without ever seeing their attackers or understanding how they were being targeted. Lieutenant Zartel watched in fascination and growing horror as the humans worked. They showed no emotion, no excitement, no stress. Each shot was delivered with the same calm precision as if they were engaged in training exercises rather than deadly combat. "How do you remain so calm?" he asked Rodriguez during a brief pause in the action. "This is what we do," she replied simply. "Humans have been hunting for survival since before we had language. It's not personal. It's not emotional. It's just necessary." The tactical situation was evolving rapidly. As hegemony elimination teams were removed from the battlefield, Allied forces began advancing through corridors that had been blocked for months. Supply convoys that had required massive escort forces could now move with minimal protection. "Allied command to Reaper 6, came a transmission addressed to Major Vasquez. "Satellite imagery shows significant enemy movement in your sector. Multiple hegemony units converging on your position. Estimate battalion strength reinforcement." "Copy that command," Vasquez replied calmly. "How long until they reach our position?" "Approximately 40 minutes. Recommend immediate extraction. You are heavily outnumbered." Vasquez looked around at her team of 50 human snipers, then studied the terrain where several hundred enemy troops would soon be advancing. "Negative on extraction, Command. We're exactly where we need to be." The human snipers quickly repositioned themselves throughout the mountainous terrain, taking advantage of natural concealment and overlapping fields of fire. What the hegemony commanders interpreted as a withdrawal was actually a tactical redeployment designed to maximize the effectiveness of long-range engagement. "Enemy advance guard spotted," reported Thompson. "Hegemony mechanized unit, 4 vehicles, approximately 60 personnel. Range, 3,000 meters and closing." "Let them close to 2,500 meters, ordered Vasquez. "Target priority. Vehicle commanders first, then communications specialists, then heavy weapons operators." The advancing hegemony force was confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. Intelligence reports indicated they were pursuing a small Allied reconnaissance unit that would be easily eliminated by conventional force multiplication. They had no idea they were walking into the deadliest trap in galactic military history. "Targets acquired," reported Chen. "I have visual on the lead vehicle commander. Talvari species, enhanced armor, standard tactical positioning." "Confirmed," added Rodriguez. "Communications vehicle identified. Zentari communications specialist visible through the observation port." "Heavy weapons platform on the left flank," noted Williams. "Borvian gunner operating what appears to be a plasma cannon system." The engagement began at exactly 2,500 meters. The first shots eliminated the vehicle commanders before they realized they were under attack. The hegemony convoy suddenly found itself leaderless, with no clear command structure and no understanding of where the threats were located. Panic spread through the advancing force as their communications specialists were eliminated with surgical precision. The soldiers could see their officers falling, but couldn't identify the source of the attacks. No muzzle flashes, no energy signatures, no visible opponents. "Contact report," shouted a hegemony squad leader. "Where are they shooting from?" "Unknown! No visual contact! Request air support immediately!" But their communications network was being systematically destroyed. Human snipers had identified and prioritized every critical leadership and support position in the advancing force. The hegemony troops attempted to establish defensive positions, but they had no idea where to focus their attention. The attacks were coming from ranges that exceeded their own weapon systems. Every time they tried to advance, key personnel were eliminated with impossible accuracy. "This is not possible," transmitted a desperate hegemony unit commander. "No biological entity can engage targets at these ranges. We are facing some form of technological superiority." "Maintain advance. came the response from Hegemony Command. Intelligence confirms the enemy force consists of 50 primitives with chemical propulsion weapons. Overwhelm them with superior numbers. The primitives continued their methodical destruction of the Hegemony advance. Heavy weapons operators fell at ranges where their equipment couldn't effectively respond. Vehicle crews found their systems disabled by precisely placed shots that struck critical components. Lieutenant Zartel watched the battlefield through his observation equipment, trying to process what he was witnessing. "This is not warfare," he whispered. "This is extermination." "No," corrected Vasquez as she engaged another target at 2,800 meters. "This is hunting." The human snipers had turned the mountainous terrain into their personal killing field. Every ridge line, every boulder formation, every natural concealment point became a firing position that could engage targets at impossible ranges. The Hegemony force, designed to overwhelm smaller units through superior numbers and firepower, found themselves completely helpless against an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't reach, and couldn't understand. "Enemy force strength reduced by 60%, reported Thompson after 3 hours of engagement. "Remaining units attempting to withdraw." "Negative," replied Vasquez. "No survivors. We can't allow them to report our capabilities to their command." The systematic elimination continued until no Hegemony forces remained on the battlefield. An entire battalion had been destroyed by 50 humans with primitive weapons, operating at ranges that galactic military doctrine considered impossible for biological entities. As the shooting stopped, an eerie silence settled over the mountain valley. The only sounds were the wind through the rocks and the occasional click of cooling metal from the human weapons. "Allied command to Reaper 6, came a transmission. "Satellite imagery shows complete cessation of enemy movement in your sector. Request status report." "Sector cleared," reported Vasquez calmly. "All enemy forces eliminated. Supply routes are secure." There was a long pause before the response came. "Reaper 6, confirm your previous transmission. Satellite data indicates you engaged a battalion-strength enemy force." "Confirmed. Battalion-strength Hegemony force eliminated. No Allied casualties." The silence that followed was even longer. As news of the engagement spread through Allied command networks, the implications became clear. 50 human soldiers had accomplished what entire divisions had failed to achieve. They had eliminated entrenched enemy positions that had held against months of conventional assault. More importantly, they had demonstrated capabilities that would force every military force in the galaxy to reconsider their tactical doctrines. The age of human involvement in galactic warfare had begun, and the rules of engagement would never be the same. In the Hegemony Command Center, 3 systems away, intelligence analysts were struggling to understand what had happened on Zerion 7. An entire battalion had simply vanished, leaving behind no survivors and no clear indication of what had destroyed them. "Recommend immediate strategic review," advised the chief intelligence officer. "We may be facing a technological advancement that renders our current tactics obsolete." But it wasn't technology. It was something far more dangerous. It was evolution itself, refined by millions of years of pressure into the deadliest hunting machine the galaxy had ever encountered. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened exactly 72 hours after the Zerion 7 incident. Representatives from every major military power in the galaxy had demanded immediate discussion of what they were now calling the human problem. Ambassador Zextai stood before a chamber filled with agitated voices and nervous energy. In the 3 days since 50 human snipers had eliminated an entire Hegemony battalion, intelligence reports had been flooding in from across the war zone. Human sniper teams were systematically dismantling enemy positions that had been considered impregnable. "The situation has escalated beyond our initial projections," Zextai announced, his 4 arms working frantically at his data interface. "Human sniper teams have conducted 47 successful operations in the past 72 hours. Enemy casualties exceed 12,000. Allied losses, 0. General Korath's massive frame shifted uncomfortably in his reinforced chair. 0 casualties? That is impossible. No military unit achieves perfect operational success rates. Yet the humans have, replied Commander Hylix, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. Our analysis indicates they are not simply superior marksmen. They represent a fundamental paradigm shift in warfare capabilities. The chamber's main display activated, showing tactical summaries from human operations across 17 different battlefields. In every case, the pattern was identical. Impossible engagement ranges, perfect accuracy, complete tactical surprise, and systematic elimination of enemy forces. The hegemony has issued a formal protest, announced Representative Colmar from the Neutral Zone Authority. They claim human sniper capabilities violate the Galactic Convention on Proportional Warfare. A rumble of surprised voices echoed through the chamber. The convention had been established millennia ago to prevent any single species from developing overwhelming military advantages that could destabilize galactic peace. On what grounds? Demanded General Korath. Excessive effectiveness, Colmar replied grimly. According to their filing, human sniper capabilities exceed established parameters for biological entities by a factor of 400%. They claim it constitutes an unfair advantage equivalent to deploying restricted technology. Dr. Veltara, the Catherian xenobiologist who had been studying human physiology since first contact, activated her presentation system. I have completed a comprehensive analysis of human evolutionary development. The findings are quite disturbing. The display showed Earth's environmental conditions compared to standard galactic habitability parameters. Every measurement indicated conditions far beyond what most species considered survivable. Earth's gravitational field is 3 times standard galactic average, Dr. Veltara explained. Atmospheric pressure is 12% above safety thresholds. Weather patterns include temperature variations that exceed the survival range of most galactic species. We knew Earth was a harsh world, commented Commander Hylix. That does not explain human capabilities. It explains everything, Dr. Veltara continued. Earth's ecosystem is dominated by what humans call predator-prey relationships. Every organism exists in constant competition for survival. Those that could not hunt effectively or avoid being hunted died without reproducing. The display shifted to show human physiological data, brain structure, nervous system development, and sensory processing capabilities that exceeded galactic norms across multiple categories. Human visual processing can track multiple moving objects simultaneously while calculating complex trajectory mathematics, the xenobiologist reported. Their nervous systems can process sensory input and execute motor responses faster than our most advanced combat computers. But surely this is the result of technological enhancement, suggested Representative Mordak from the hegemony delegation, who had been granted permission to observe the proceedings. Negative. These capabilities are completely natural, Dr. Veltara replied. Moreover, what we observed at the demonstrations represents only basic human proficiency. Their true specialists possess capabilities that approach the theoretical maximum for organic entities. General Korath leaned forward, his massive bulk straining the chair's supports. Explain. The humans who eliminated the Xerion 7 forces were not elite specialists. According to their own classification system, they were standard infantry snipers. Their true precision marksmen, which they call scout snipers and counter snipers, possess capabilities approximately 60% superior to what we have already witnessed. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. If basic human snipers could eliminate battalion-strength forces, what could their elite specialists accomplish? There is more, Dr. Veltara continued reluctantly. Human military doctrine includes units called Special Operations Snipers. These individuals undergo training regimens that would be considered torture by galactic standards. They can engage targets at ranges exceeding 6,000 standard units while compensating for dozens of environmental variables simultaneously. 6,000 units? Whispered Commander Hylix. That exceeds the engagement range of most starship weapons. How is this possible? Demanded General Korath. Dr. Veltara's form shifted nervously. Humans evolved under conditions that required constant vigilance and precise calculation for survival. Their children learn to throw objects accurately at moving targets before they can walk properly. By adolescence, they instinctively calculate complex ballistic trajectories while under extreme stress. Their entire species? Asked Zextai. Their entire species, confirmed the xenobiologist. What we consider advanced military capabilities, humans consider basic childhood development. Every human possesses the fundamental skills necessary for precision marksmanship. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. The idea that an entire species had evolved natural military superiority was unprecedented in galactic history. Request permission to address the council, came a new voice from the observation gallery. All heads turned to see Major Vasquez standing at the visitors' platform. She had been invited to provide first-hand information about human capabilities, but her presence still made several representatives nervous. Permission granted, announced Zextai. Major Vasquez stepped forward, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the agitated atmosphere in the chamber. I understand there are concerns about human military capabilities. I'm here to address those concerns honestly. Is it true that your demonstrated capabilities represent only basic proficiency? Asked Commander Hylix. Yes, Vasquez replied simply. The soldiers at Zerion 7 were standard infantry snipers, good at their job but not exceptional by human standards. And your elite specialists? Pressed General Korath. Our elite specialists can do things that would probably violate several more articles of your galactic convention, Vasquez said with a slight smile. But we haven't deployed them because we thought it might be considered excessive. Representative Mordak leaned forward aggressively. The hegemony demands an explanation for capabilities that exceed natural biological parameters. Vasquez turned to face the hegemony representative directly. You want to know why humans are so effective at long-range precision? I'll tell you exactly why. The chamber quieted, waiting for her explanation. Your species evolved in safe environments, Vasquez began. Stable climates, abundant resources, minimal predation pressure. You developed intelligence, technology, and civilization because you had the luxury of safety. She paused, making eye contact with representatives throughout the chamber. Humans evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill us every single day. Weather that could freeze or cook you within hours. Predators that could track you across continents. Prey animals that were smarter and faster than we were. Food sources that were poisonous unless prepared exactly right. And this created your abilities? Asked Dr. Veltara. This created everything about us, Vasquez replied. Humans who couldn't calculate wind drift while running from a predator died. Humans who couldn't track moving targets while starving to death died. Humans who couldn't work as coordinated teams died. Humans who couldn't remain calm under extreme stress died. The implications were becoming clear. Humans hadn't developed superior military capabilities through training or technology. They had evolved them as basic survival requirements. For millions of years, only the smartest, fastest, most accurate, most adaptable humans survived long enough to have children, Vasquez continued, generation after generation. Natural selection filtered out everyone who wasn't capable of precision hunting under impossible conditions. And now those evolutionary advantages apply to modern warfare, concluded Commander Hylix. Every human child learns to hit moving targets with thrown objects before they learn to read, Vasquez confirmed. Every human teenager can calculate ballistic trajectories instinctively, Every human adult can remain calm and focused while people are trying to kill them. These aren't special military skills, they're basic human survival capabilities. General Korath rumbled thoughtfully. Your species evolved to be natural warriors. No, Vasquez corrected. We evolved to be natural survivors. The fact that those skills translate to military effectiveness is just a side effect. Representative Mordak stood angrily. The hegemony maintains that such capabilities constitute an unfair advantage in galactic warfare. Vasquez turned to face him again, her expression hardening slightly. Unfair? Your military doctrine is based on overwhelming technological superiority and systematic elimination of non-combatants. You've been slaughtering civilian populations for 3 years because they couldn't effectively fight back. That is standard military doctrine, Mordak protested. Not anymore, Vasquez replied coldly. Now you're facing an opponent that shoots back and hits what they aim at, from ranges you didn't even know were possible. If you consider that unfair, maybe you should reconsider your definition of fairness. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The hegemony's military advantage had been based on the assumption that their opponents couldn't effectively respond to long-range precision attacks. Human snipers had just eliminated that assumption. What are human intentions regarding galactic warfare? Asked Zextai carefully. We want to end this war, Vasquez replied. The hegemony has been expanding through systematic intimidation and precision elimination of resistance. They rely on the assumption that no one can match their long-range capabilities. We've just proven that assumption wrong. And after the war, pressed Commander Hylix. After the war, we go home, Vasquez said simply. Earth is a nice place once you get used to it. We're not interested in galactic conquest or domination. We just want our neighbors to stop shooting at each other. Dr. Veltara activated another display showing projected combat scenarios. Based on human demonstrated capabilities, we estimate that 5,000 human snipers could eliminate hegemony long-range forces across all contested systems within 6 months. 5,000 individuals against millions of enemy troops? Questioned General Korath. Human snipers don't engage enemy troops, explained Vasquez. They eliminate critical personnel, command staff, communication specialists, logistics coordinators, specialist operators. Remove the right 50 people from a 1,000,000-person army, and the entire force becomes ineffective. Precision decapitation, murmured Commander Hylix. Surgical elimination of command and control, Vasquez confirmed. It's more humane than massive battles that kill thousands of soldiers who are just following orders. The strategic implications were revolutionary. Instead of massive fleet engagements and ground campaigns that could last for years, human snipers could potentially end conflicts by eliminating a handful of key individuals. The Galactic Council must establish new protocols, announced Zexatai. Human capabilities require immediate integration into our strategic planning. And the hegemony's protest? Asked Representative Kolmar. Will be considered, Zextai replied diplomatically. However, the Convention on Proportional Warfare applies to technology, not evolutionary biology. Humans have not violated any galactic agreements. Representative Mordak stood again, his voice strained. This discussion is irrelevant. The hegemony will adapt to counter human capabilities. Our technological superiority will overcome biological advantages. Major Vasquez smiled grimly. You're welcome to try. But you should understand something first. What you've seen so far. The demonstrations, the tactical operations, the elimination of your forward positions. We've been holding back. Holding back? Asked Dr. Veltara. We've only deployed standard infantry snipers using basic equipment and conventional tactics. We haven't introduced our counter-sniper specialists, our extreme-range marksmen, our urban warfare experts, or our technological integration units. The chamber grew very quiet. We also haven't deployed our psychological warfare specialists, Vasquez continued. Humans who can identify and eliminate enemy leadership from ranges where the targets never even know they're being observed, or our scout teams, who can infiltrate secure positions and provide targeting data for elimination teams operating from completely different star systems. General Korath's voice was barely audible. Different star systems? Human snipers can engage targets through dimensional transmission systems if provided with real-time targeting data. Range becomes irrelevant when you're shooting through folded space. The implications were staggering. Human snipers weren't just superior to existing galactic forces. They represented capabilities that most species hadn't even imagined. The hegemony war machine depends on secure command centers and protected leadership, Vasquez explained. Your generals think they're safe because they're surrounded by armies and shield generators. But if a human sniper team can get within 6,000 units of your leadership, those protections become irrelevant. Representative Mordak's face had gone pale. You're threatening to assassinate military leadership? I'm explaining why this war is about to end, Vasquez replied calmly. The hegemony can continue fighting, but your command structure will be systematically eliminated until someone with enough sense to surrender takes control. The chamber remained silent for several long minutes as representatives processed the new reality. The galactic balance of power had shifted fundamentally, and everyone was trying to understand what it meant for the future. Finally, General Korath spoke. What do humans require for continued cooperation? Simple, Vasquez replied. Stop shooting at civilian populations. Negotiate in good faith. Accept that some species are naturally better at certain things than others. And that's not unfair. It's just reality. And if cooperation is refused? Asked Commander Hylix. Then you'll discover why the galaxy is going to start calling human snipers unfair, Vasquez said with a cold smile. Because when every shot hits exactly where it's supposed to, and the enemy never even knows where it came from, fair isn't really the right word anymore. 6 months later, the hegemony officially surrendered. Their war machine had been systematically dismantled by precisely coordinated elimination of critical personnel. The conflict that was expected to last decades ended when every hegemony general, admiral, and strategic coordinator found themselves looking over their shoulders, never knowing if a human sniper was calculating the trajectory needed to end their careers permanently. The Galactic Convention on Proportional Warfare was amended to include a new classification, evolutionarily enhanced biological capabilities. It was commonly referred to as the human clause. Major Vasquez returned to Earth along with her sniper teams, but the galaxy would never forget what 50 humans with primitive weapons had accomplished. Military academies across the galaxy began teaching courses on human-style asymmetric warfare, though none of their students could actually replicate the capabilities they studied. And in the quiet moments between conflicts, when young officers gathered to discuss legends and impossible stories, they would inevitably turn to the tale of the humans who had ended a galactic war with nothing but mathematics, patience, and the evolutionary gift of perfect aim. The galaxy had learned to call human snipers unfair, not because they violated any rules, but because evolution had created something so perfectly adapted to precision warfare that no amount of technology or training could match it. They were right. It wasn't fair at all.